If you like fantasy football, then you know the guy that drafted Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago or Saquon Barkley last year probably lost the fantasy league because of it. Whether it's your RB1, 2, or 4, these guys need to be foundational pieces that are going to help our fantasy football squads push for the playoffs and even contend for championships. We cannot afford bust at these positions, so today I'm going to be going over 6 players that I am wary on drafting on as I think they're going to be busts, as well as ranking them on a warning scale of how worried you should be about them. Starting off strong here with Ashton Jeanty. I made this statement before. I'm going to make it a statement again. I do not think Ashton Jeanty is worth the price point at all. As you see right here in the R&D, he's going at the RB5. Right now, the ADP, the back of the first round at 9. I do not think the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be an absolute stud team like everyone thinks they're going to be. Obviously, they have gotten better in this offseason, going out and drafting Fernando Mendoza, okay, bringing in Kirk Cousins. Their offensive line has gotten better. So you're saying to yourself, okay, fantasy R&D, what's the point of doubt here? I just do not think that the Raiders are going to be in a position to be running the ball as much as we believe they are. Obviously, we saw last season that Jeanty ate a lot over the air as he's seen his target share, 4.3 targets per game. That's pretty tremendous for a running back. I mean, those are, getting towards Christian McCaffrey numbers. Obviously, this dude is a baller, finished last season as the RB16. I think, he is a very talented guy. And I think in years to come, dynasty-wise, this dude is an absolute smash draft. But as far as redraft goes, I do not think that this is the time to be taking him. In this upcoming season, the Raiders are probably going to be, they're projected to be winning 5 games, okay? That means there's 5 games where we are in a positive game script where we can be trying to run out the clock. Every other game, we're pretty much just going to have to be throwing the ball, whether it's Fernando Mendoza, whether it's Kirk Cousins, and that's pretty much going to be benefiting who, okay? The pass catchers in this offense, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, which is why I just had him in a potential wide receiver breakout video last Monday. However, with Ashton Jeanty, I just don't think there's enough room in this offense for him to be getting that workload share. As I said earlier, obviously the offensive line has gotten better. They're about a middle of the pack team with the new center bringing Tyler Linderbaum. I think he's going to be, obviously better pretty much for a majority of the season last year. Ashton Jeanty was getting tackled before he even made it through the line of scrimmage. So I think there is room to improve. But taking him as the RB5 spot, I mean, that is a little bit ridiculous when we look at guys like, okay, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. You're pretty much saying, okay, he's right behind there. You think he's going to be better than a guy like Saquon Barkley. You think he's going to be doing better than Kyron Williams, going to be doing better than, other guys out here in the squad. Travion Henderson, I think, is probably more where we can be expecting him to land at. And I think Travion Henderson is going to have a good year. Don't necessarily think Travion Henderson is going to be an RB1 this upcoming season. Obviously, I think for both of these guys, this was a stacked running back class in 2025 last season. There's room to improve. I think the future is very bright for them in the NFL. Is going to cater to their skill sets well. I just do not think that either Ashton Jeanty or Travion Henderson is going to be able to have that RB1 role this upcoming season. We obviously know Ashton Jeanty is a bell cow. There's pretty much no problems there. I'm not scared of Mike Washington at all. I think there could be a little bit of a timeshare there, more than people think, with Clint Kubiak coming in the door with Vegas. But in all reality, Jeanty is a generational talent, just not one that I'm excited to be getting on right now. So looking at where I have him on my warning scale when we reveal, I have him at the top, at the A. Not the number one guy that I'm most scared of, so make sure if you're still watching at this point to continue on, as I'm going to be going through all these guys that you need to be wary on and scared on, as well as a bonus take you see on the right-hand side. But Ashton Jeanty, we need to be sounding the alarm with him as he's going in the first round. That is a premier price tag that we cannot be affording. Getting on with Quinshon Judkins here. This dude obviously had a great season last year as well, finished as the RB26. Pretty much, I think he's a very talented guy. Cleveland Browns, kind of similar story where this offense is just so bad. They're not really going to be producing at a high level, at least from the running back perspective. They're going to have to be slinging the ball. Well, that's going to be Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, who knows? However, we do know that pretty much Quinshon Judkins is never going to be receiving the end of that workload as his target share is not that high. Not really a pass-catching running back. He did have 2.6 targets last season. However, we have to remember, whenever Dylan Sampson was in, pretty much Quinshon Judkins fell off a cliff as far as the receiving game goes. We were having Dylan Sampson games where he was getting 8 receptions, 6 receptions. I mean, it was ridiculous numbers. There was times where he was fantasy viable. He could have been a solid RB2, even RB1 for you at times. Obviously, Dylan Sampson went down with injury last season, which kind of made it so that Judkins was the premier bell cow as Sampson was dealing with a dislocated ankle for pretty much the majority of the season, never came back fully until, going a lot later half of the season, and even then, it was pretty much Judkins' time to shine. Do think that this offense is going to be accelerating and their defense is going to be getting a whole lot worse in all reality. So they're going to be having to score more often. However, I think similar to what we saw with Jeanty, that's going to be benefiting the passing game more than what we see with the running game. Obviously, we see here as well the offensive line is not great at all, pretty much bottom of the league, 28. So it's not looking great for Jeanty, and I think we need to be realizing while he is a bell cow, one of the few left in the NFL, I don't think it's going to be that great for him coming up into the next season, where we have him here on the warning scale at the B tier, right behind Ashton Jeanty. I think as he is a first round price tag with Jeanty, we need to be a lot more wary of that. But Judkins is right behind him. This is a premier guy that a lot of people are high on. That we need to be pumping the brakes and saying, I'm not sure if Jeanty's gonna, or, if Judkins or Jeanty are really going to be able to get it done this season. So a lot to watch out for here. Getting on with a guy in Bhayshul Tuten that people are extremely high on coming up into the next season, as you see right now going as the RB25. So pretty much people are saying probably going to be an RB2 for you this upcoming season. Obviously, he has had a lot to gain in this offseason as Travis Etienne has gone to the New Orleans Saints. Looks like he's pretty much going to be the premier guy in Jacksonville. However, I am pumping the brakes on that. As we see with the statistics here, which I love to give y'all if you're still watching at this point in the video, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, do all that great stuff for me. We're sitting around 50 subscribers right now. We're looking to hit 100 before the start of week 1 this upcoming NFL season. I think we can definitely do that with the fan base we are growing here, and I appreciate you sticking around for the R&D. Getting back with Bhayshul Tuten here. Obviously, this guy, we did not necessarily see it last season at all. Stats are nothing crazy, as he was pretty much the backup to Etienne, who had pretty much a career year for himself. So nothing really that stands out here, only 6 points per game fantasy-wise, not even getting an entire target a game. However, as we see, he has the most to gain. And when we look at what Travis Etienne was doing last season, it was pretty tremendous, getting 4.3 yards per attempt, about 3 targets per game. If Tuten is able to get that, yeah, sure, I think he can be a bottom-end RB2. But we have to remember, Chris Rodriguez just came into this offense, and I think it's going to be more of a split backfield than we necessarily are anticipating. Obviously, I trust Liam Coleman. I think he's going to be able to get it. Bhayshul Tuten was the guy that he drafted. He was his hand selection. So in all reality, I think he's going to be the premier guy over Chris Rodriguez. However, I think there's going to be a split backfield there. Chris Rodriguez also not a target problem per se. I do think that Tuten is going to be able to get it there. But I think it's going to be either they're splitting, drives, or they're going to be, it's just altogether not necessarily a bell cow role. When we're drafting him at the back of the 5th round, I mean, those are still premier prices. There are electric guys still in that price range where I'm not super sure if I want to be taking such a large gamble with the Bhayshul Tuten here. Getting on to where I have him in the risk scale, we need to be saying that he is the S tier currently. Okay, this is the number 1 guy that I'm hesitant on, as so many people are excited for him in this offseason. I think that we need to be watching out. Even though he is the number 1 guy, we still have 3 more players and a bonus pick that we need to be being aware of. And this next guy is going to be a massive warning label attached to him that we need to be watching out for. So make sure you're sticking around for more R&D. Every year, it's the same conversation with Breece Hall. This dude should be a RB1. But as he's attached to the New York Jets, I don't think realistically that is ever going to be happening. Last season, he finished as the RB21. That is his worst ever career year, fantasy-wise. Going back in the history, doing the R&D for y'all, 2024 was the RB17. Season before that, RB6, and then the season before that, his rookie year was the RB7. However, he only played about half the season, so those numbers are a little bit skewed, but we're going to keep him in here. But as we remember, 2023, this is a top 10 running back. We obviously know this guy has a talent. If he would have ended up on the Kansas City Chiefs, yeah, I think he's a top 10 running back. Yeah, I think he's going in the 2nd round. But currently, he's not going too much farther down than that. Currently going in that 3rd round, still with guys like Etienne, where it's like, yeah, this guy's going to be a baller. Javonte Williams, there's no questions attached to him. With Breece Hall, do we necessarily think he's going to be a high-end RB2 for you? In all reality, this dude's a freak. Obviously, last season, 3 targets a game, which was his record low, pretty much getting, usually 4 targets. And that's kind of where we saw it fall off. As the, quarterback play in New York, pretty abysmal. They're going to have Geno Smith coming in, which I think, if you want to argue that he should be getting a little bit more work there because of that fact, sure, I agree with you. Is that enough, though, to be making him a top RB2? I do not think so. This team is not one that's going to be necessarily competing a lot of the times. They just brought in, again, a lot more ball catchers outside of Garrett Wilson that should be getting a lot of the work here. And there's just not a lot of game scripts where Breece Hall can be effective. And whenever they're running the ball, they pretty much know what's going to happen. Breece Hall, though, amazing pass catcher. Pretty much any game that he blew up last season, it was because he got some 60-yard bomb downfield and was able to eat because of that. But I'm not super sure that I'm confident in saying that Breece Hall is going to be a top in RB2 for you. We need to be severely dropping this price in our expectations for Breece Hall, as in reality, there's no world that he can ever return on this fact. This always happens with Breece Hall. He creeps up in price just because we know he's a monster on the field, okay? We know this guy is very talented. But as far as what he can actually do on the Jets, I think we need to really watch out for that. So going over to my warning scale here, we have Breece Hall right at the C here, right below Quinshon Judkins. I think everyone knows as year after year goes on, Breece Hall, we have to understand, like, he's on the New York Jets, okay? There's going to be expectations that have to be mitigated because of that. However, people still are drafting him in the third round, okay? If you are that guy that's considering taking Breece Hall, even if he falls to you, in the later third, I'm still pumping the brakes. Once he gets to that fourth round, yeah, sure. I think that's a great price to be taking for a guy that's, in all reality, probably going to be a low-end RB2 for you. You're going to still be able to start him most weeks. But, whenever you do have him, you have to be okay with those weeks where it's just 10 points a game. And, that's what you're selling for. The upside here is tremendous, but the floor is not too much greater either. Getting on with Rhamondre Stevenson, the offseason has been electric for this guy and his actual fantasy ADP, currently going at 77, so the RB30 off the board. So he's just slipping outside of the RB2, going as a solid flex position. Last season actually had a great year, finishing as the RB22. I mean, this dude was getting around 13 points per game, 4.6 yards per rush attempt, excuse me. It's absolutely tremendous numbers. We do have to remember, though, the one lingering red flag in this backfield for Rhamondre Stevenson is TreVeyon Henderson, the guy that they just invested heavy capital with, and we've seen week after week he can actually do it. We have to remember, though, Mike Vrabel pretty much hates his guts, so he's not going to let TreVeyon Henderson get out there as much as he should. There have been some rumblings in this offseason that maybe TreVeyon Henderson is going to be able to get those RB1 touches, and if he does, I think Rhamondre's ADP is going to plummet off the face of the earth. In all reality, he should. Both these running backs, though, it still seems like New England wants them to prove it to them. That's the offense that Mike Vrabel runs out there. Rhamondre obviously has had a lot of fumbling issues in his career. However, we also saw the similar thing with TreVeyon last season. However, we have to note, as far as explosiveness goes, TreVeyon takes the cake. Any touch that TreVeyon has in his hand, there's a great shot that he's going to be taking it to the house. So there's no world where we can necessarily be passing up on that for a guy like Rhamondre Stevenson. Obviously, he had a great year last year where, they were able to go to the Super Bowl. Ever since the Patriots started in the playoffs, where was TreVeyon? Okay, on the bench. They wanted to go with their guy that was a veteran. He's been in the league for multiple years. But what we saw, with TreVeyon Henderson last season, as I talked about, the yards per run with Rhamondre, 4.6. Okay, yards per run for TreVeyon, 5.1. Okay, so TreVeyon did not have a bad rookie year at all reality. He had an amazing rookie year, but Rhamondre was just right there with him. Obviously, I think the explosiveness and the hype factor of TreVeyon Henderson factors in a lot with this take. Obviously, the New England Patriots are going to be a great team again. However, we have to remember the New England Patriots had one of the easiest schedules last season, whereas in this upcoming season, it's mid to hard. It's up there as, probably a top third hardest, upcoming schedule. So, there is a world where both these guys have some regression that we are not expecting. Either way, it's going to be factoring into this risk factor, and I think that Rhamondre is going to be, whether it's either one of them is going to be falling, it's going to be Rhamondre by a mile. So going over to the warning scale, I have Rhamondre here at the F. Obviously, I think everyone knows with the TreVeyon Henderson hype that, he's going to be a baller. We've all seen the talent on the field, okay? When he was running for the touchdown and looked over at the sidelines to say, is it okay if I get a touchdown? Is that all right? I know these guys aren't going to catch me. We obviously know TreVeyon is the future. But as far as right now goes, I think Rhamondre still, is catching some people's eyes in this offseason. But we need to recognize that this dude, is not going to be, contending, on your roster for a starting spot for long. And I think that's pretty much going to be falling off this season. But as far as, warning the people, I think everyone is well aware of where Rhamondre stands right now. Rounding it out here with Bill, we have Jacory Croskey-Merritt. This dude, the hype last season was tremendous for this guy. Pretty much what we saw with Austin Ekeler getting a season injury was that, okay, it seems like it's JCM's time to shine. Everyone was over the moon for him. And what did he do? Coming out the gates, it was kind of a mixed bag. Starting at week 1, 14 points, 2 points, 10.7, and then 27. At that point, everyone was like, oh my gosh, the JCM takeover is here. From there, he did not get above double digits until week 15, okay? This dude did not have a great time in the NFL at all. Pretty much, and you can see it right here on his statistics as well. Not even averaging, 10 fantasy points per game, less than a target per game. It was pretty abysmal for him. I will give it to him though that the Commanders' offense was pretty poor last season, as Jaden Daniels was out with the injury. Terry McLaurin also out for a long time. Pretty much it was abysmal for him. There was no hope for this offense. So if you want to give me the argument that, oh, Rachaad White, is old, he's washed, it's not going to work out. Jaden Daniels is going to come, he's going to pepper him. Don't necessarily think that is the case, though. Obviously, he was competing with Chris Rodriguez last season as well. Both those guys did not do amazing. We do have an ascending offense as Jaden Daniels is coming back in. I think he's going to be bringing this team back up to where they were the previous season when it was rookie year, Jaden Daniels, and he was an absolute baller. Obviously, offensive line, about middle of the road, nothing to, scoff at, very good. After we remember, Rachaad White, only in 2023 was the RB10. The dude was averaging around 15 and a half fantasy points per game. In all reality, when he's not behind a talent like Bucky Irving, I think he's going to be getting a ton more work. And as far as what we like in running backs, we like guys that can catch the ball and guys that get the goal line touches. And what does Rachaad White do? Pretty much both of those things. So where in this offense is JCM going to slot in? I'm having trouble pretty much figuring that out. Obviously, we see here 4.6 yards per run. The dude was an absolute monster when he was out there. Half the time, though, that wasn't very much. So if you want to say those numbers are skewed, I would 100% give that to you here. However, in all reality, I don't think that JCM is going to be any sort of fantasy asset for us in this upcoming season. And obviously, so his ADP is at RB41. Looking pretty rough for him coming up. I do not think that people are going to be, valuing that high. People are kind of aware of this bust at this point. And as we see here, I have him at the D as well, very low. In this, warning scale, I think people are well aware that this dude is a bum. But we need to be remembering that Rachaad White is a baller. He's just been behind an amazing talent for so long. Coming into an ascending offense with the Commanders, I think there's going to be a great time to shine for not JCM, but for Rachaad White, and going to have a little bit of a return to glory with him. I gave you 6 running backs that are going to bust. Now I'm giving you the bonus, as I always try to do here on the Fantasy R&D channel. So if you're still enjoying the content, drop a like, subscribe, trying to hit 100 subs, like I said earlier. But Tony Pollard, okay? A lot of people last season, including myself, were very high on Pollard as we had Cam Warren at the 1 of 1 going in the draft. It seemed like an ascending offense, okay? And whenever an offense gets better, the running game by association is going to get better because we're going to have more red zone touches. That did not happen last season, okay? So what happened this year? They invested in the offense again, okay? They got Carnell Tate. They just brought in Wan'Dale Robinson. They have Brian Dable. Seems like it's going to be a night and day offense. Don't necessarily think this team is going out and winning the Super Bowl by any means necessary, but I can guarantee you the running game is going to be better. Tony Pollard is pretty much a bum. We haven't seen him in full form since the Cowboys days in all reality, and even then we only had like 1 or 2 seasons where it was anything of note. Pollard, though, going into his age 30 season, it's not looking great for him in all reality. And I think that we have to remember that Tyjae Spears is here as well. Nick Singleton just got drafted. The running back room is very diverse. And Tyjae Spears, while he did not have the takeover that we thought he would have last season and absolutely replace Pollard, dude was pretty good. And he was kind of fighting off injuries at the same time. I don't think whenever he came back, he was 100%. However, though, at the beginning of the year, people are going to argue with you, oh, Pollard had, 88% of the snap share? The dude was an absolute bell cow, one of the few left in the league. Whenever Tyjae came back, that pretty much all went out the window. I think that the talent has pretty much gone for Tony Pollard as well. So having him here on the bus scale, I have him here at the bonus spot. So what do you think? I want you to comment down below. Where would you rank Tony Pollard in this list of guys that we need to be worried about and concerned coming up into this season? I hope you enjoyed this content, and make sure you drop a subscription for more.